to start our time together with a little moment of silence, and just a moment of silence and a moment of going inward and talking to our ancestors, however we perceive that for ourselves and in our faith traditions and belief traditions. I want to put a call out specifically to our little baby spirits and have them to come be with us. So if you hear any laughter or any things going tickles your cheek, that's what happens when you call them. And I think it's important to invite them because we're talking about them. We want to ask their respectful attendance as ancestors to be with us. And also, if anyone here in this room knows or loves a little one who left us before its first birthday, please feel free to hold in your heart with the memory and feeling of that young one. Just ask all of our spirits and all of our ancestors and all the belief systems and all the walks of humanity to be with us as we envision a better world where the loss of the baby before its first birthday is a very rare happenstance. It happens way too much in this culture, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We want it to be very rare and very sacred and very sad. And be nice to have it never happen at all. So I'm going to light a candle and we just take a moment to be with our silent thoughts. It's a good way to ground and find the space as well. Let's all take a nice deep breath together. Let's all get grounded in this space. Feel our bodies on the chair that we're sitting on. Feel the air touch our bodies. Let's just be aware of ourselves in space and time and be aware of the people around us. And I'm going to ask everyone to go around, introduce yourselves in the way that you feel comfortable, and just let me know, maybe short little sentence, what brought you to this particular workshop today. So
I came in late. Is this is the topic different than what's listed on the schedule?
This is when baby becomes an ancestor.
Thank you.
So, okay, this is the full title of the workshop is when baby becomes an ancestor, the community's response to grief.
Thank you.
They couldn't all fit in the little.
No problem. I was getting confused with the slides.
I'll explain that in a little bit.
Thank you.
Who would like to start with introduction? Yeah.
My name is Ayana. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I saw this on the registration form, but I'm coming from the last class of this sister. I saw this title, and it was the ancestor part that brought me. I've been working with my own ancestors for the past, intentionally for the past 2-3 years, and so that brought me. And actually, now sitting here, one of my main clients, one of her close friends, not an infant mortality, but she was due to birth in May, and I guess basically the baby died. And so I never heard of that happen to anyone. It just kind of touched me, and so I'm here for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Angela, I live in Toronto, here in Canada. what brought me to this workshop is I just want to learn as much as possible about how to support people experiencing different birth experiences, and I've never myself as a doula had to support someone directly around infant mortality, but I'm really interested in how we do that and how to be as prepared as I can be and how to take care of myself also doing that. So that's what I'm here.
So, my name is Michaela. I'm from Maryland. What brought me to this workshop is that infant mortality is around. It's like something that you know exists, but you don't really know how to actually cope with that issue. So that is what really brought me to this workshop, just to learn what really can be done.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Tia Thompson. I am now in Sacramento, and I'm transitioning from a student to a midwife right now. For me, what brought me to this particular workshop is I feel like for me it hasn't been a personal experience in how dealing with loss, and I feel like we as midwives we always celebrate is about actually bringing in life, but loss of life is a reality of midwife too, and I feel like that's something I need to kind of hone in on and learn how to really understand and support my that person.
Thank you. Great. My name is Amy Frazier, and I am from Bothell, so just north of Seattle, and I'm a student midwife. And the reason that I am here is really to just learn how to be a provider that can hold space for women in any situation that they may face, and that means knowing how to just be adaptive to the great situations, but also the really tough ones too, and not just not accepting it. And there's a process that has to happen, and I feel like so many people within our communities don't even talk about death, let alone accept it. So I really just want to open myself up to the differences between those and just holding that space for the dialogue to happen.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Talia. I'm a future caregiver and a healer, and I just want to be able to help people with coping and dealing with this and helping them heal after such loss.
Good morning, my name is Mamo. I'm from New York. I started a doula program there, and I've dealt with this loss of a child, and I've just dealt with the loss of my son. He's lost two sets of twins. And, but the blessing is that they just had a set of twins. So, and the other thing is that at our hospital we've been having quite a few siblings, and we don't have a system yet. So I want to take this information back and share with the staff.
My name's Leon Tanis. I'm from New Jersey, and what drew me to this is like many of the other women, or some that have mentioned, I don't have direct experience with this, so, and it's not something that, at least in my community, is talked a lot about, so it's something where I come to get more information and create that space and sensitivity around the topic.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Perez. I live in San Francisco and mainly work with communities of color throughout the Bay Area. I'm here for a couple reasons. One, because I just love you. Samsarah, always gain from your wisdom. Part of my work as a midwife, working with communities of color, is to really prevent infant mortality to the best of my ability. I'm not trying to cry right now. In my first year of practice, I had a mama that lost a little one. I think I did really well by her and her family, but I'm still grieving that loss a lot.
And that's a beautiful point. caregiver's grief as well. Absolutely. Bless you, Sophie.
My name is Jewel. I am a doula in San Francisco. Here for a couple of reasons. I personally haven't experienced this, but I'm very empathic. And I had a very dear friend and lover who lost his daughter during labor, and after he told me, because of course he knows I'm a doula and how connected I am to birthing. I saw him after a few months, and I noticed I didn't hear about him every time I asked about his daughter. I said, "Hey, how's the baby? I know the baby should be here." And he would never respond to my texts. And then I saw him and, gave him the hugest hug ever. I was super happy to see him and said, "How's the baby?" And he could barely look at me in the face when he told me that he had lost his daughter, and I actually haven't spoken to him, like he's not responsive. So I feel like he knows that I carry that for him at times. And also, it's just something that is too common when we start seeing numbers around this. I don't really know how to process this kind of space and this kind of grief without accepting it as my own, and I need to learn how to create those boundaries so that I can be as supportive as possible and hold that space in a proper way without losing weight my own grief.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi everybody, happy to be here, thank you for this. My name is Brittany True Campbell, and I am a traditional doula and student midwife and a COC from Ferguson, Missouri. And I am here because as a doula, what I've seen most of all is moms who have preterm labors after they've planned very natural, empowering births. And so it's grief for the mother that her baby may be in NICU or she may not have had the birth she wanted. And also another thing that I see a lot is mamas who have abortions, and then they deal with the grief years and years after, like birthday, around that time. So infant mortality is also an issue. I haven't dealt with it one-on-one, so I'm just here to gain more things to share with my community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, good morning. My name is Sandra Hernandez. I'm originally from Brazil. Living here, I am a psychologist, and I was trained as a doula by Samsarah Morgan, our mentor, and Rita Paricio, our mentor, as Latina, and so many, connections between our cultures. And one thing that we are looking to study together with Rita much more is about duelo, what we call the situations when we lose the baby, and then working a little bit, all these years with Shafia and learning from the Black communities, how many things, we have to learn from you, make sure, we go less as possible through our Latino communities as well. So this is one of my points, and so I'm really here to learn from all of you. And in the personal aspect, there is a situation about my sister that I never really was aware of. Years ago, she lost two babies, and I wasn't there for her. So I'm sorry, I'm just realizing, I said I'm a psychologist. Don't think that we are strange, we are strong in any moment, because when it comes to personal, I say I'm first a woman, a sister, a daughter,
Absolutely.
a mother, myself, my daughter's in Brazil. So that's the point. How much you have to learn.
Exactly. I'm sorry for your loss, your family's loss. And I want to just say, we don't have to apologize for our tears, especially in my workshop.
That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm not
workshop.
apologizing. I'm just thankful.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yume. I'm from Berkeley, California. I'm an acupuncturist and doula, and started a business called AcuDoula this year. I'm from Japan originally, and the ancestor part kind of struck me because basically like our ancestors. And we also have temples and shrines dedicated to babies that were lost. Yes, spirit babies. We call them water babies. They've been lost to the water. So I just feel like, you know, there's a place for this grieving to take place. Might not be a lot of communication, but there's a sacred place that women can go to, families can go to, and I feel that's really important and maybe something that's missing in a lot of cultures. That sort of ability to grieve. And on a personal level, my best friend had a stillborn birth several years ago, and you know, likewise, I didn't really know how to deal, or I tried my best. I thought, and she was in a state, she was traumatized, you know, and she was totally unable to sort of receive any of that. And so yeah, it was a lesson for me. Good news, she just had a baby 2 weeks ago. A little girl, so that's the happy ending.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bria. I'm from Indiana. I'm currently a life coach and a yoga instructor. And I shared a little bit of my story yesterday about finding out that I have a disease called premature ovarian failure. And I found out when I was 16. So I went through this really confusing grieving process for children that I wasn't planning for or trying to have because I was 16. And trying to understand, well, they don't exist, so they're not dead technically, but I'm still grieving. And that's still continues to be something that's kind of pushed to the back of my mind. Like, I've dealt with it, but I think it's gonna come up again. And I am just really interested to hear what you have to say, and how my story relates to infant mortality. And I also have a friend who had an abortion last spring, and I was the only one she told, so I took her to the abortion, and it was a very weird, resistant feeling inside of me because I can't have children. And I know that she looks to me, because I'm the only one that knows, besides the male. So I would like to, she's grieving, and she has a hard time with her emotions, so I would like to get some information to give to her to help.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vaughn, and I'm from Minneapolis. I'm a nurse midwife from Minneapolis. And I have a pretty significant story around infant loss, and my family that has been pretty powerful. In any event, I'm working, we're planning on having in March of 2016 in Minneapolis a grief, perinatal loss, and grief training for women to work with African American women around fetal loss, and a ceremony for those who have lost their babies, because it's just something that's not really dealt with. So that's coming up in March in my city, and I'll help these women and just trying to learn more about how to help women who have lost their babies, because I've seen how it can really spiral into a really bad place for women.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So let's take a pause for a moment. Let's do some seating. There's a chair here. If we want to pull it here, or do you want to sit here? There's one
I'll
chair.
bring it back here since I'm volunteering.
Oh, you're here to help. That's wonderful. There were folks who came in while we were doing introductions. We haven't had a chance to say who they are. We're sharing who we are and what drew us to this particular workshop. So there were two ladies that came in. Yes.
I'm Althea Davis, and just the ancestor piece, I'm working on that. And broaden my horizon. I haven't really dealt with loss, but I've been around the working clinic with women. And so I kind of got mixed feelings about, but I haven't been around anybody that lost their baby carried full term. We all was blessed, was able to carry our babies. but it's basically to broaden my horizon, my base, and return to my people, my ancestry.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hi, my name's Denise. God is good. I can't say that I've lost any of my children, but I have a niece about 3 years ago. Her little boy was, I think he was born stillborn. And I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm attending ICTC and my major's gerontology.
Good being here. Is there anyone else who needs to introduce? Yes.
My name is Osha Lami. I'm a holistic nurse and a holistic doula. And I'm also a priestess. So I think the ancestor piece, because I work with the community with different, in different ways. I think that's what led me here. I'm led by spirit, so I just
Did what you were told. I feel you. And you're back.
Hi, I'm Jomina. I'm a volunteer, and I just want to let you all know, for interruption's sake, that I will be the runner for each of the rooms. So if you see me popping in and out, I'm also here to support you if you need me to bring anything.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So, my name is Samsarah Morgan. I have been blessed to be a doula for 35 years. This is my 35th year of being a doula. I'm a mom and a grandma, and I have helped supported one of my sons and his partner through a miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage. It's part of my reproductive history. It is not something that I've talked a lot about in the wide world, so I want to make space and bring that in also too. I think that's personally a driving factor in this work that I do, and I've also experienced a stillbirth as a doula, and that was my 35th birth. I will never forget it, ever, ever, ever. Actually, I want to thank that beautiful baby spirit, Karamon. Karamon is the angel of my practice, and it was his birth that helped me to decide, to realize that I really want to be a midwife. And it's taken a long journey, but you know, he's right beside me, so we're gonna get this done eventually. But what I went through, we can talk about this forever and ever, like each of the stories and the evolutions, like birth and death being sisters, and they always are bringing powerful lessons whenever birth happens or death happens. So, so I'm gonna honor young Caroline, my beautiful baby angel, for being with me. The evolution of this particular workshop comes from the work that I did with a beautiful young sister by the name of Nicole Barañas. She was supposed to be with me this weekend, but she couldn't at the last minute. Things came up for her in her life. But I want to honor her and her work, because it was my sitting and talking to her. I'm a spiritual, intuitive kind of a teacher and doula, and she's this beautiful spiritual researcher, and she's got that mind that she gets to sit in front of the computer and finds all this stuff, which I just think is amazing, because my brain does other things really well, but not that. So in my sitting and talking to her, we're having a conversation one day around the issue of infant mortality and the fact that it's in such crisis in the African American community, but that no one talks about it. When you think of the numbers, and we'll go through it in a little bit, we're talking about how many women are affected. And the focus is on African American women because clearly I'm African American, and but across the board, there's no race of women in America that aren't being deeply impacted by this. We lose more women overall than any other industrialized country. So this is women and babies. So this is a very big deal. And you sit in the coffee shop and you look at the women coming in buying their cafe lattes and going about their life, and it was like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's a lot of people. And we also take a look at the pain-filled nature of the culture that we live in, the violence, you know? And everybody's got their little thing, whether it's gun rights or mental health or whatever. All of it could net down to generations and centuries of unmet needs, ungrieved grief, unsupported pain, and direct abuse. You know, but nobody wants to have those conversations because then we have to change the culture that we live in. So, Nicole has done a really beautiful job of just distilling for me and for me to share with you some of the issues that are going on with infant mortality. When we're focusing on the passing of a baby, and for the purpose of our time together, we're going to honor a baby starting at the moment of conception, because it's about the mother's perception of grief. So when a baby is lost at any point, I know that the official loss is a stillbirth, a miscarriage or stillbirth. The official number that gets you counted as in the infant mortality stats is a baby that died before his first birthday. We're just going to tweak it a little bit more because the grief can start earlier for other things. And although we're going to talk a lot about mamas, I'm also going to always remember, we're always going to remember partners, dads, grandmas, best girlfriends, anyone who loved that family and who was anticipating that baby. We want to honor them because they're part of the grief scenario. I do want to make a space for women who've had abortions and who grieve that decision, that they felt that that was what they needed to do, but it was not necessarily what they wanted to do. And that's a reality for a lot of women that again, they are sitting silently with sometimes other people telling them that they should feel empowered when they don't. So we want to make the space to honor all those different types of grief. But we're going to start to take a look first with Nicole's wonderful information on what the problem is.
Samsarah, can I add that there are women who've also had abortions that were forced to do them, that had no choice to
Absolutely.
do them.
Thank you. That is a very key piece. There are women who were directly forced or feel forced to do it. Exactly. Now, your presenter here has a bit of a hearing problem. So, don't be afraid to yell at me. I won't be insulted. If I turn my back, I don't hear you. So if you wave at me, I want to keep questions to a minimum. I want to make time for them, but I want to get through some presentational stuff, and then I will be pausing for your questions. So if something comes up for you, write it down. If you have a burning desire to say something, raise your hand and we'll deal with it. We'll work with each other. I'm a doula. I can work with anything. So a few words about infant mortality. The infant mortality rate among Black infants is almost 3 times higher than that of white infants, primarily due to preterm birth. Preterm birth is babies dying before their due date. In 2012, preterm birth affected more than 450,000 babies. That is a lot of babies. That's 1 out of every 9 infants born in the U.S. So, CIA, I didn't see that. That's good. What did they, well, let's not even go there. Posted a list of the world's countries ranked by their infant mortality rates. At the bottom, with the highest rates of neonatal death, at the bottom, Afghanistan, Angola, Somalia. At the top, Monaco, Singapore, Sweden. Where's the United States? It doesn't even crack the top 30, falling behind nearly all of its first world contemporaries. That is a city in and of itself right there. Racial disparity may be caused by lots of things, not just in adulthood, but across the whole life course of certain people, stress, discrimination, environmental differences. All of these things contribute to racial disparities in pregnancy for people of color. There's issues of poverty. There's issues of coming back and assistance programs. So if you're a pregnant woman and you need support, there's nothing for you if your family and your direct community can't help you. More and more, the important low-tech things that women who are expecting babies need is being denied them. basic things like housing, food, shelter, being the most powerful country on the planet. Black people are not the forerunners of collecting services. Actually, we're a minority in this country, so it's actually other poor women and other racial groups that collect the most services. But since the perception is that when you're giving aid, you're giving it to women of color, it leads to all these cuts. So racism definitely affects this scenario. Blacks have consistently had high infant mortality rates compared to other racial ethnic groups in the United States. That's across the board in every state you go. If there's Black folks, we're losing the most babies. Blacks have had the highest infant mortality rate during the 2002-2004 period, where nearly 14 Black infants died for every 1,000 births. It's a ridiculously high amount of babies.
That is, and I certainly wasn't aware of that.
Yep. And it's interesting when I talk about infant mortality, people don't know that at all. Across, there's no idea. And as a holistic birth worker, I also want to point out that those babies aren't dying at home births.
And is that 14 Black infants that for every is 1,000 Black births?
No.
Nearly 14
Total.
Black infants per 1,000 American births.
Got it.
Was it two, what was the year, I'm sorry,
2002, 2004.
2004.
Thank you.
You don't need my permission. Go on.
The Washington Post reported on a startling home crisis in this country. The number of women in the U.S. who died in childbirth is nearing the highest rate in a quarter century. An estimated 18.5 women died for every 100,000 births in 2013, compared to 7.2 in 1987. The Post reports that this translates to, quote, a woman giving birth here is twice as likely to die than in Saudi Arabia and
thing that this piece is not bringing in is the fact that there are women, I know women of color who are low income, who go to every single doctor's appointment and do exactly what they're told.
Right, exactly.
But what they're told, they're not told how to carry a healthy pregnancy to term.
Yeah.
Peeing in a cup and taking your prenatal vitamins is not all that you need to do to have a healthy pregnancy. Okay, so the discussion here is still not talking about, you know, we need midwifery care. We need people who can spend more than 8 minutes with the client to find out what's going on with her, what her resources are. Does she have a place to live? Is she properly resourced to be able to bring a human infant to full term? You know, it's really not that complicated. It's complicated because it doesn't make money for corporations. But, you know, we're talking very low-tech interventions are needed to help women have better outcomes. I see you, okay.
I think it's also important to talk about the economic status of women and what they're doing for work, because systemic and institutionalized racism, things like, I don't use the word microaggression, but workplace racism are also silent stressors that we internalize, and that affects our health and the health of our fetuses.
Absolutely, absolutely. Going to work and, you know, is work a peaceful environment or a safe environment, or are you exposed to toxins? You know? So overall, recent studies show that the US overall has among the worst, in some studies I've read that it's the worst, infant mortality, maternal mortality rates among industrialized countries. This is especially true for Black and brown infants. Excuse me. The private nature of infant mortality has made it a quiet crisis, lacking public discussion or high-profile campaigns that accompany cancer, autism, or postpartum depression. How does this complicate things for people who are of African heritage? Second generation African American women now have the same infant mortality rates as their African American sisters, which was powerful. That was spoken about briefly yesterday, that we have our sisters from Africa who do well and birth well, and then they come here, and within a very short amount of time, they become struggling as well. So that's definitely a big arrow pointing to where the problem is. It's not about Black women. Women's bodies can't give birth. Infant mortality is a very hard topic to talk about in the Black community, with the struggles that already exist in so many other ways that Black mamas are feeling helpless to ensure long life for their children. I do many processes with young Black women when they have their sonogram and they find out that they're carrying a son. And I find more and more that that is not a happy moment for those women. It's a moment of deep grief and fear and terror. Oh my God, it's a boy. How do we start healing our community and the world? We want to address the issue. We want to try to consider the vulnerable place America has with its people of color. We want to call racism racism. Do not be afraid to use those words, even though others might be uncomfortable with it. We want to be informed holistically and try to imagine the pain of women who have lost or have made decisions that they are now grieving. All the beautiful resources. So I want to thank Nicole in the absence for that wonderful work that she did. Thank you.
Just a quick question, do you know if she minds that if she shares that with us in a classroom, like email format?
I will, I'm gonna make a mailing list that I will send you the entire PowerPoint. Both of us are fine sharing this information. Please credit us, that's all we ask. So, that's the climate that we're living in. Those are the issues that we're dealing with. My focus is on the horror has happened. In one of these ways, shapes, or forms, a client, a sister, a mother, a brother has lost their baby. What do we do as a community? How do we address this? I'm, again, coming from the belief system, I'm Catholic, so I'm coming from a belief system that Sperm meets the egg, there's a little baby coming. Everybody's all excited, preparing for a little baby. And what's sweet about my tradition is that we have, for a miscarried baby, we have a special mass called the Mass of the Angels. And the Mass of the Angels is not for the baby, because there's a belief that the baby's gone to heaven and the baby is safe, the baby's happy with God. The Mass of the Angels is for the parents and for the community. And it's to lift up the community, it's to support the community, and it's to ask the baby to pray for its parents. Which I just love myself. That kind of tender care that I find in that particular ritual in my faith tradition is what I'd like to see us do, all in our different ways, because we all have our different walks and different connections and different beliefs. So what we're going to get into is some helpful tips, but I really want people to individualize this. No one size fits all when we're dealing with anything having to do with human beings. So what can we do as a community? How can we respond to a miscarriage or the loss of an infant? The loss of a child is an abomination. Horrible thing. It is so horrible, it's so painful, it tears at the heart of the community. Our psyches have the most difficult time accepting this form of a loss, and as a result, we want to make it go away. We want to pretend it's not happening. It just hurts so much. We just want to get past it. As a result, we may attempt to shut down the grief of the family because it just hurts us too much. We just can't be with it. This is, of course, unfair to the grieving family. It may also interfere with their ability to grieve. Sometimes people need permission to feel what they feel. And if everybody else is moving on, they feel like they might have to move on too. Do that little feet. How can you support another's grief? I think the most important thing to do is to start with yourself and start with how you're feeling. I see a hand. Do you need something, sweetie?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just doing a head count.
Oh,
I apologize.
The most important thing for us to do when there's a loss, and even like as we go through our lives, is to check in with ourselves. How we started our time together with kind of planting our feet and breathing, feeling our bodies, feeling our aliveness. To the extent that we're able to do this as we go through our daily lives, things get a little easier. That's why all these wonderful mindfulness practices and prayerful practice, meditative practice to kind of help us do that. And if we have that going on in our own personal lives, it helps us deal with all the ups and downs of being a human being. The first thing to do, though, is to check in with yourself. Okay? How can you support another's grief? How close were you to this child? How close were you to this family? You know, were you the sister? Were you the partner of this woman? Were you the auntie to be? That's a great big deal when your best girlfriend in the Black community, you know your best girlfriend's going to be the auntie of your baby, right? Or your grandma, you know? Once a baby is brewing, people start anticipating. We start planning. There's a future envisioning for this baby, and once the baby's no longer there, all those dreams are crushed. So check in with yourself. Maybe you need time to grieve. You need to get with a friend of yours and talk about, oh my God, you know, I was going to be the auntie, or I was going to be the nana. Be still with yourself. Make sure your cup is as full as you can get it before trying to give to somebody else. Because when we kind of approach people with our unexpressed grief, inevitably we're going to say or do the wrong thing. So let's try to get clear. It doesn't have to take a long time, and it's not going to be a process that you just do a couple things and it's done, but at least begin the process as you're moving forward. Right? How do you feel? What are your resources as the person who's going to give support? Be you the doula, auntie, nana, brother, sister, father. What are your resources? Who can you talk to? Get to those people. Places, things, your journal. How do you feel around grief? How do you feel when other people are crying? How would you feel if people around you needed to scream or wail? Because that's an appropriate response to the death of a child. That is totally appropriate. Howling like a wolf. How would you feel being the person if someone around you is doing that? Can you be there? Can you not be there? No harm or foul if you can't. It's not about shaming the caregiver. If you can't, then you know that you might need to make sure that someone else is in that spot who can, though. Because if the parents, if the mom needs to wail, she needs someone who can hold that wailing energy with them. And it's totally fine if it's not you. How do you feel if you're trying to help people and they shut down? Can you be with people in the silence without abandoning them? Everybody's going to do this differently. Some people get still. Some people get loud. It's all good. And not everybody can be with the energy that people are going through. So know yourself. Trust yourself. Here's some things that are generally, universally not helpful. When a child dies, please don't say it'll be okay. Please just don't do that. It's not okay. It won't be okay. It'll never be okay. Ever, ever. Never, ever. What will happen, what I have seen happen, what I've experienced to happen, is that a new normal takes place for people. They're being recalibrated by this experience to be whole new beings. But what they had is gone. And people who want to push folks to get back to normal, whoa. Personally, I find that very abusive. Let people go through their process. Please don't say it'll be okay. A hole has been punched in the family, in the community, and although they will learn to live with the loss, happiness will come back to them. The loss will always be there. When a child dies, please don't say, I know just how you feel. Please don't say that. Even if you yourself have lost a child, you lost your child. You had your experience. You went through it your way. And that's a valid and beautiful story. And it might even be appropriate to share it. But the trouble is in our society is that we're all so hungry for people to have heard our story that we share it inappropriately. If someone has a new loss of their child, that's not the time to share your story, unless they ask you. Sometimes someone will know that there's been a loss and say, how did you do this? In which case, your survival story is what they're asking for. And that's fine.
Samsarah,
yeah.
Can I make a quick comment here? I think this is very similar in terms of when you say that we're all trying to share our stories. So what happens a lot with mamas with big bellies in the world, that people will come to them and say, oh, let me tell you about my horrific birth experience, because they're trying to heal from that birth experience that they never had a chance to. And that's the first thing that pregnant mamas do not need, is anybody trying to tell them how bad their birth experience went, because that's their story and not the mama's story. But it's an example of how
we do that. Because we're so traumatized, so many of us are so traumatized by our births, we didn't get to share, we didn't get heard. Yes, exactly. Even if you yourself have lost a child, that was your personal, precious experience. Another person is not going to experience it the same way. We want to be respectful of each other's pain, like you want to be respected for your pain. We want to start this wave of people knowing how to be there for people so there'll be a lot less trauma in our culture. we're talking about infant mortality here, but this could apply to lots of different kinds of losses. Oh, I know exactly, girl, that happened to me. No, it didn't. Because you're not her. So this is impossible. Okay, so this having that sensitivity about it is really helpful. Now's not the time to process your own loss unless you're directly asked for it. So if the mom or dad are coming to ask you directly, how'd you get through this? What did you do? Then please feel free to share your recovery. If a child dies, please don't say it was meant to be. I'm a Christian, and I can't tell you how angry I get when folks do that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that they've turned away from God and the church because people said that to them. Don't say it was God's will. Please don't assume to speak for your opinion of God's will. That mama and God will work it out. That's their journey together. That's one of the things, like when I talk to clergy, I'm like, please. We get into fights about that, but that's all right. The family will make that determination based on their belief system as they can, and depending upon where they are in the grief process. Part of their grief process is being mad at God. They don't need no help. Right. They will work it through. That's like, you get down on your knees and you get pissed off and you have your Job moment of like, God, why'd you take my baby that I wanted so much? That's that family's journey. Support them in it. You know? Even if you have the same spiritual tradition as the family, I recommend letting that family have their own walk with God. And for your role to be as the guardian of the process that the family is going through, your witness and your lover. Fix them a nice warm meal, you know? Because people end up in these conversations about, God loves you. No, he doesn't. Yes, he does. I'm like, whoa, so not helpful. Let's not go there. Please don't say you can have another child. Children are not replaceable objects. It's not like they lost a purse and they just can go buy another one. The family may go on to have many other children, God willing, and if they are willing, yet not one of them will replace the child that they lost. When a child dies, please don't say you will get over this. No, they won't. This is a kind of a repeat of my first little piece, but I'm just looking at all the things that people say that may not be helpful in the moment. Please don't say you'll get over this. No, they won't. They can heal. It may take a long time. Birthdays, special occasions, pregnancies and births of friends and family might stimulate the grief they feel today. So it's an ongoing process of feeling and releasing. This is okay. The family should feel free to talk about it with trusted persons and cry new tears. Those reminders will bring new tears. And that doesn't mean that they haven't gotten over anything. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with them. It just means that they are still alive and they're still feeling what they felt. And each year that they live, it gets a little bit better. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit better. Tears have chemicals in them that help normalize brain chemistry and release trauma. Crying, tears contain chemicals that help normalize brain chemistry. So if you're upset, it helps things calm. Crying and shaking. Shaking also, if you experience a trauma, you're going to shake. What we do in this culture is stop people from shaking. Actually, the body needs to shake to release, it's releasing energy, it's releasing hurt, it's releasing pain. It's part of the neurological system of the human being rewiring itself. We tell people, calm down, sit down. No, let the person shake. Let the person cry. Just be with them. You want to not have them hurt themselves, and not have them go into a place that's dangerous, but let them be. I see your hand.
I can't forget the image of one of my sisters with the epilepsy. If you cannot stop them, you have to take care of them. That's all. And I learned this all my life. And you just made me this image. Thank you.
There was
That's
another
fun to
hand
learn.
up. Do you want to say, someone who wanted to say something briefly?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so it sounds like stopping a person from crying is stopping them from healing or dealing with what they're going through. So even
Absolutely.
children sometimes.
Especially children. That's part of why our toddlers tantrum, because they're growing new synapses in their brain, and it's all overwhelming, and they're trying to work it all out, and they just get mad, they stamp their feet, and we all tell them that they're bad. It's like, this is about their brain wiring, it's not about volition. But let's stay on topic. Yes. Quick.
I think it's really important that we're talking about, like children can't be replaced. One of my aunties, uncles, they had like 3 miscarriages, or their baby was born, but they died, and it was 3 daughters, and they always kept the pictures on the mantelpiece, and they would talk about them very fondly, and they had more children, but it wasn't something that ever went away. There was no new baby.
Baby is not a new purse. Anyone else wants to say something quickly? I saw a little flurry of energy when I was speaking there. So, please don't say look on the bright side. Because right now there is no bright side. And it may take a long time before there is one. While it is ultimately true that things happen in life that bring lessons and opportunities for growth, this is not the time for the community to dictate this. This is the realization that it is what is best for the family. This realization is one that the family needs to come to on their own and trust that they will, especially if they're being loved up by the community. Here are words and actions that help and heal. My first stop is ritual and traditions. Everyone's got them. And if we don't, communities can come together and create them. Rituals and traditions that honor where people are today and give them tools to help them go through this long process of healing, feeling, crying, and being alive when something you thought you never could withstand is happening to you right now. So we can look back into our healthy faith traditions, and if there are none there that work for the people that you're serving in your community, come together and create brand new ones. And I'm gonna leave that to communities to do. But what I believe is it's important that we do it and that we have it. Is your hand up, Ryan?
Yeah, and as a doula and working in the hospital, you come across different traditions and rituals that are done within different cultures. And we just had an experience with a family, African family, who lost a baby, and they wanted to, in some cultures, they have a tradition that you mark that baby. So that if that baby comes back again and that next baby has that mark, they feel that that spirit has come back. And it was a big issue in the hospital for them to get this done, which I found very odd because we have doctors from Africa. And they acted as if this was, backwards, and I stood there in amazement. And one of the doctors said, well, I don't know. And I didn't mean to, be rude, but it was like, I was like, but you do know, and then he looked at me and I said, so what are we gonna do? So they did it, and it got done. It was just the process of getting a small scalpel and just marking the baby on the list, and that's all it was. But everyone acted like it was, this was something that just, but it got done and they were okay.
I'm glad it got done. I think it's taken a while for hospitals to get this right, and some hospitals are trying really hard. They used to whisk your baby away, and you didn't see it. Now, they'll when my son and his partner lost my little grandson, they put a little cute hat on him. He was lost at 20 weeks. So they put a little hat on him and they wrapped him in a blanket and they brought him to his mom and dad and they got to sit with him and talk to him and we were able to take him to have the mass for him. But we also had a fight with the hospital. There was another story on that, which I won't get into. But and on one hand, in postpartum, they were very kind and respectful, but the rest of the hospital was just crazy and they didn't understand why we wanted his body. I'm like, hello, we're Catholic. We've got a church waiting for this baby. What are you talking about? Right. Yeah. So it's better than it used to be, but they have a long way to go to honor all traditions, and that is certainly the most, simple request. We just put a mark on our child. My hand was up.
Yeah, I had talked about sort of cultural traditions before, but during the loss of my friend's baby, did some research because it was around the holidays, and found that there was a group of women that and men that gather annually around that time, just because it's a hard time for some families. And I refer that to a lot of people because I think it's even hard to just like Google search that. Like it's called spirit babies, but how would one kind of know to look for that even?
Exactly.
That it even exists.
Well, I definitely would love you to be on my mailing list and whatever information you can find out about it. We have to share it.
Right.
How will they know about it? We're going to share that information because folks need to do that. And if you're the doula for this family, say you were the doula for my family. I had the dual role of being grandma and doula, which was really hard when I lost that little grandchild. But it took calling up I was able to do this because I was the grandma. Calling up the hospital. What happened with that child was that they lost my grandson's body.
Oh no.
I was like, you lost him? And I'm not the one. So I had my son and his partner in tears. We have a church ready. We're gonna get ready to take our baby to be cremated and have his service. And the hospital's like, oh, you wanted, and her attitude was, you wanted that? Yes, that was my grandson. Okay, his name was Akari. That was his name. And I'm coming down there and I want my goddamn grandson. And I know what he looks like because I was there and I held him and I looked into his face. So I'll be there in a half hour. Find my grandson. Lick.
Yeah. Then?
That was me. We got him.
Oh.
But I was like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And the administrator came and apologized to me. Once I came in there, like the upset grandma that I was, the administrator was like, oh, Nelly. Because I told the person on the phone, my next stop is, I'm going to call ABC News. I'm coming down there, I got a cell phone. The bill's paid. I'm going to take care of this.
Sorry, how do you, so trying to think about, how do you help somebody going to form that support system? Because I'm trying to imagine if a mother is someone who actually had to be on the phone fighting. And so you already have most of your grief, you're trying to grieve your child. And at the same time, you now have to muster up the energy to fight the administration, So.
And so many give up.
Yeah, so how is it that you can do that as part of the support system, or if you see a mom who doesn't really have that support or something without kind of overstepping or forcing her to do something, or
you can always ask to share information and it's yes or no of that person's part. I'd like to share some information with you. I think it will help what you're going through. Can I share it with you? She says no, leave it. But generally I think people are happy to be asked and happy to be offered help. And if you come at them respectfully like that, then you can share that. But I think it's important for us to go home, like on all of our doula websites and our healer websites and our teacher websites, this information should be there for people to be Googling. What's on Google is what people post. So if we'll all post this stuff, if we all blog about this stuff, it's going to be there. So when someone does a search, they'll find it. You and you.
I think just to kind of go off of what you were saying, a huge thing that at least what I'm learning through becoming a student midwife is just the demand and the necessity for informed consent and informed choice.
Exactly.
And just even if you're not a provider or a healthcare worker or that entitlement of whatever these things might be, you still have that. You have that energy to offer that to them and empower them to know that they have that choice to make. And when it's like those really hard situations where emotions are high and crazy, you're the rock for them to just let them know that this is a choice that you can make, and let me support you the best way that I can, but they need to say yeah or no, like yes or no, but that's huge.
And it's very important to remember too that part of how human beings evolve, all these death traditions as well as our birth traditions are part of helping us grieve and heal. Our earliest ancestors buried their dead.
Yeah.
That's what we did. Oh my goodness, really?
But what is the hospital trying to do, keep the babies for guinea pigs to run tests?
There's many, I'm not gonna get into that, but there's many reasons, there's many things that are done, research and other things. You know, sometimes it's just plain incinerated. But my thing is, the family should be consulted as to what they want done with the remains. And say, like, moms have to fight for their placentas. Like, what are you gonna do? That's our body part, our child. We want to have first say about what to do. Let me get through the rest of this, and then maybe we'll go hang out in the hallway a little bit and chat if we need to. So, one of the most helpful things you can do whenever anybody has a loss, we want to train ourselves. Someone says, my mother died. First thing we say is, I am so sorry. I am sorry for your loss. People might even try to not want you to do that because what will happen is they might cry. Oh, don't say that. I think it's important to say it anyway, because we're all walking around on this grief. Just good manners, like you say, bless you when someone sneezes or wish them well. My baby died, or I had a miscarriage. I'm quite sorry to hear that. They say thank you, or they have a tear, and you make some time for that. All the other things we do, my goodness. It is very important, even on a split-second cellular level, people appreciate that someone heard, saw, and felt their grief with them, even if it's for a little tiny bit, and you go on to whatever else it is that you were talking about. What can we do to help you? What do you need? Understand that the family might not even know what they need, but be prepared to ask the question anyway. Be prepared to ask it more than once. As the family gradually connects with what they might need, they will have an answer. They may not have an answer today, but they might have an answer tomorrow. It's generally a good idea to show up with the traditional stuff if you're that member of the community, even as doulas. Doulas are in great positions to go home and cook up healthy food and bring it to the family. Or help them start the daisy chain of people that will do that. Just as we do, we help mamas prepare for that 40 days postpartum, and there's these cute apps on the computer that help people decide who's gonna bring them a casserole which day of the week. We can do that for death as well. Feel free to gently make offers for food, drink, and company. Do not take it personally or take offense if your offer is refused. It's not about you, it's about the person you're serving. Who are you offering it for? Yourself or the grieving family? Leave them the space to say no today, and maybe they'll say yes tomorrow. Beautiful angels. Words or actions that can help and heal. We care about you, we love you. It's easier for doulas to say this than other professional folks. Midwives are pretty cool at saying I love you. Different professions have different boundaries around that, but there's a way you can express it within your construct. I value you. I see what you're going through. My heart is with you. But friends and family, no matter what, I love you. I'm so sorry this is happening. I love you so much. Never get tired of saying it. These are incredibly healing words. Back them up with solid actions. Please do not make promises to a family in grief and don't follow through. If there is a sin, that is it. Do what you can. That's all any of us can do, as much as you can. If you must break your word, please speak to them and make amends. Truly do your best to keep commitments made to people experiencing such profound grief. Encourage them to talk about the child when they are ready and if they want to. If the family is open to it, ask them to talk to you about the deceased little one. What was he or she like? Favorite color or toy? Depending upon the age of the child, of course. Even little bitty babies had lots of preferences and things. He liked his little stuffed rhino. You know, he felt so happy in this blanket. Let families tell their story to you. Let them talk and talk and talk about their little baby. What did you love most about this little baby? What did you love most about being pregnant with this baby? What did you enjoy about the pregnancy? Again, if the mom is open to it, if the family is open to it, let her tell her story. When elders die, we do this. And we understand it's a great honor. Let's talk about great Uncle Cecil and what a great guy he was and how we all loved him and pictures of him doing all the things with us and who all loved him. But when it's a baby, somehow we forget to do the same thing. The same path to healing is required. Sometimes communities dismiss the deceased baby. In their grief, they pretend the child never existed. When we do this, the family is alone in their grief and don't feel permission to bring up their child or their feelings about their child. Some people tell them it wasn't a child, depending upon how many weeks pregnant you were. And that's crazy making to the person who lost the child.
Samsarah, can I just also say that there are others that don't necessarily view the little one that way either. So respect like where they are in terms of their relationship to the
We want to respect where families are in relationship. I'm emphasizing that because I see that so much, that the clients that I'm working with, they're grieving something that people are telling them that they shouldn't even be grieving. So yes, I want to have the balance, and it's like, we don't get to decide what's worth grieving for someone else. For ourselves, yes.
Because I know here in Oregon, we don't talk about it.
Most people don't talk about it.
We don't. And as people of color, that's what I mean. We got to do better with it. We don't say nothing.
Yeah.
And it kind of rolls over. So
And that stuck grief lives in our bodies. It turns into sickness. It destroys marriages because if the couples can't talk about what they went through, it's one of the #1 reasons for couples to break up is the death of a child, the loss of a child. Right. So let me get let's remember birthdays and death anniversaries. Some babies, their birth anniversary and their death anniversary is the same day. Some babies die before their birthday. That number is important. It's one of the things that singles us out as human beings from our other beautiful monkey cousins. You know, what makes humans humans is that we honored all this stuff until we got all civilized. The day one dies is an important day to be remembered. The community storyteller would remember. It would speak of spirit babies. Spirit babies were part of the community, right? So remember, you know, after things have gone back to normal for the rest of the world, the family's grief continues. They're still crying. They still have an empty bassinet. They still have an empty place in their heart for this little one. Often it's only the family who may remember the little one's birthday or death anniversary. A card, a hug, or a flower can be a sweet observance of that child, now an ancestor. Remember Father's Day and Mother's Day. Although a baby has died, a parent was yet born. The baby is part of their life forever. Remember to check in with the family. A phone call or even an invitation to brunch. Flowers, cards, etc. All appropriate. Standard grief. Let me get through it, my love. I'll get to you. Standard grieving protocol, unless the family says no. Okay? Although they may bring tears, they will be tears of healing. If you are unsure, ask them how they feel about your intention to honor their child and their parenthood. I'd like to do this for you. How do you feel about that? Although many of my clients have told me that they appreciate the intention of a friend and family who show such compassion and respect, though they may decline the invitation, try again next year. I've had clients tell me after a while, maybe the first year or two was hard, but then they appreciate that I remember. Oh, Samsarah, you're the only one who remembers. As a community, we can honor. We can honor the parents as parents. We ought to honor their lost young one as part of the fabric of our community. Beautiful flowers. Things that we can do. That's actually my favorite part. The death of the baby is the death of hope and dreams. With compassion, time, and respect, the grieving family can slowly begin to dream again. In the loving embrace of their community, they will slowly expand into life as it is. Sweetness will return, and the bonds of love will be tempered by the effort. The bonds of love get made stronger. If you do grief well, you get to be a bigger, stronger person. And I wish you peace. Thank you very much. Question?
I just wanted to recommend this book. I did like a 4-hour workshop on loss, and in preparation for that workshop, I found this book called Companioning. So like being a companion is an action verb. Companioning in the time of loss. And it was written by 2 nurses and a pastor, if I'm not mistaken, but they were people who were integral in the Fallen Leaf program. And the book was so great.
Say the title again, please.
Companioning in a time of loss.
Excellent.
I want to say, but I bought it as an ebook, and it was really helpful. Yes.
There are wonderful tools out there, and I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to start posting them on my blog and having them out there and available. If you would like to be in contact with me, you have my email right there. Samsarahmorgan@gmail.com. I'm going to pass a little piece of paper around. I would love to get all of your contact information so that we can start that process of sharing resources. This is really important work. You know, it used to be part of what was considered traditional women's work, and I would like us to reclaim it. You know, women being the first healers and teachers in any community of humanity that you can think of. So we were the ones there at birth, and we were the ones there at death, and we knew what to do. And it's the tragedies. There's so many beautiful big hearts here in this room who have at times have felt constricted in how to give. You know, so we want to loosen that up. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, if you still have a little time.
Yeah, a little time.
Just for the specific point from you as a interfaith minister, when the baby become an ancestor?
When does the baby become an ancestor?
So how you, I just want, because that's really in my mind, and I am so strongly connected with spirituality, despite of being a psychologist again, but that's really strong for me.
Of course.
And the point, and everybody know you have your own faith, whatever. Right. Or you don't even have, but there is something there. That's what I believe. So what would be from your point?
From my opinion?
From your own,
When a baby becomes an ancestor, when it ceases to function on the physical plane. So, you know, it's like the point of death.
Yeah, so, and how, or if you have been finding ways to transfer death to the mother and the father who lost the baby.
How do I'm sorry, I'm not
If you
understanding.
have been in your own way to try to transfer that
My belief?
Yeah.
I don't transfer my beliefs.
No, I mean, God,
It's
how
okay,
can I
I know
say?
you're struggling to
share. To share that's something that is so strong and so.
To share that the baby is an ancestor?
Yes.
Yes. I have not had also because of my demographic that I serve, I don't have a problem with that. Generally, African American folks get that and accept that.
Good.
So in the group that I'm talking to, that's not an issue. So the challenge is that's why I have that there, because there are other belief systems, you know. But whatever that belief is, the baby is no longer with us on the physical plane. How do you handle the grief? You know, and then you'd work individually with your client. Okay, where I have asked clients, where do you believe your baby is?
That's a good. So it's a good point.
Yeah. Where do you believe?
Harming.
Is the baby
the person?
Is the baby just gone? Is the baby an ancestor? Is the baby in heaven?
So depending on what your faith or religion is, you can say, well, your baby's an angel now, or your baby's an ancestor.
If you know that for a fact that that's the family's belief system, otherwise I would have them identify that to you.
By asking the baby. Okay.
And
I would ask them. I would not assume anything, because that's the thing that I have to be careful of. Being Christian, that not everybody thinks the way I do. I mean, and I'm 55 too, so I'm always like trying to re-up my sensitivity all the time, you know. So, and I go where my clients lead me. If I'm in a room full of Catholic people, I'm toasty cozy, because I know exactly the words that everybody jives with. But my job is, as a provider, my job as a human being, is to, if I'm trying to help somebody, I want to help them. You know? I have my belief system to keep me warm. I'm helping someone else right now. Any other questions? Go ahead. I'm just going to grab a piece of paper while you're talking.
What is the responsibility of care providers in facilitating the healing process after miscarriage or loss of baby? And the reason I ask is one of my very, very, very good friends lost a child, and she asked the doctor, when can I, try again? And the doctor said, oh yeah, whenever you want to. Without really kind of buffering that with any type of processing time or anything like that, and now it's she ended up in a spiral of addiction and depression with a new baby. And I know for a fact that she still grieves that child, and it was more of a replacement baby then. So what is the responsibility of care providers?
Well, doctors are not ministers or psychologists. They're not biologically, sure, she could have a baby. That's his medical opinion or her medical opinion. But, as a doula, you get to mention the other piece. That it's not just about your body, it's your mind, your spirit, your soul. Often people do go and conceive another child pretty quickly. And that's another thing actually I'm going to add to my presentation. That, if you have not healed your womb from your first loss, now you're bringing a second child into this wounded womb, and this wounded heart. So part of being a doula to a client who's lost a baby is having those conversations, or the girlfriend, or the sister, or the auntie, or the friend. I know the pull is there very big to have another baby, because you think it'll make you feel better, because it hurts so much and you feel empty. When you lose a baby, you feel empty. One of the things I loved about being a pregnant lady was how full I felt. My first babies were twins, so I felt full.
Wow.
I loved that, And so I imagine, you're carrying a child, and then that emptiness is horrible. How can you sit? How can your community sit with you when you just feel that empty place, and give them the faith that it will pass. It will get better in time. You and you.
From a Chinese medicine perspective, we say minimum 3 months for 3-month cycle to strengthen the organs and the uterus. That's just to give you a little bit of a framework. And from my experience, my friend, she got pregnant very soon after, and that was healing for her, you know. So for me, coming from a Chinese medicine perspective, I was concerned because I didn't feel like maybe she was fortified enough, strong enough. At the same time, that was what she needed. That's what she believed she needed.
And again, needs are very individual. You know, so we're as community, we're guiding people to listen to their highest best self. And people tend to know what that is. You know? Check inside of you. How are you feeling inside? Is your body ready to carry life again? Are you ready to do this again? Or do you need time? Give yourself permission to take time if you need it. Yes, dear.
Usually at our facility, we put a fallen leaf on that mother's door with a tear so that everyone knows that that's what's going on with that mom.
Yeah.
Secondly, the nurses are involved because we look for certain things that the mom might say or do that are like red flags, okay? Thirdly, she gets a psychological evaluation before she leaves, okay? So we take it very seriously. The nurses on our floor, you know, when there's a loss, because on our floor, that's life. So when there's a loss, it's like everybody, you know, everybody gets alert to it. So, you know, I don't know what happened in that situation, and that she went home, and, you know, but these are the things that we do medically before they go. But as doctors, yes, they are going to say, whenever you get ready, you can. And I think some of them mean not so much, you know, that you go home and try to get pregnant right away, because they, you know, they do this all the time. So they actually are saying whenever you're ready, okay? But if you don't understand what your is, okay, then that's the problem. So that's just like bringing baggage into another relationship. Am I correct?
I agree 100%, and I think that's why these rituals are helpful.
Yes.
Because the rituals help you get ready,
and
if you want to have another baby. If you have a way that you say goodbye and you put that period on one piece of work in your life, you close the chapter. It's never completely closed. It's a whole book. We're going to put a period at the end of this chapter and start a new one. There has to be a ritual of closure. And once you have the ritual of closure, then you're freed up. Then you could have that ritual and say, you know, I'm going to wait to have that other baby. Or if you really feel that you're going, then fine. Then that's what you're called to do. You know, I also believe that little baby spirits might want to come back, right? So round 2 on that cue. So you never know. So I want us to have a little bit of closure before we leave, just for a minute. And I want everybody to sign my list before you go to. But let's all just hold hands. Let's make a quick circle. So we've done a really big piece of work together, and I really appreciate all of your time and attention.
Oh, I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Got it?
Go ahead. I know.
So I just want to have us all take a nice deep breath together.
Just like that.
Since we're all here together in this room, let's all feel each other's hands, let's hold on to each other, give each other a little squeezy. Let's celebrate our aliveness. Let's celebrate us all being alive here in this room, and all the reasons that brought us here to this particular workshop on this particular day, this particular time in our beautiful lives. And I want to give thanks to all the ancestors who came here and sat with us and helped us to bring our best attention. We want to thank them, and we want to release them to go about their beautiful business. We want to thank our beautiful baby spirits. Thank you, sweet pies. Thank you, honey buns. Thank you, beautiful babies, for being here with us. And please go about your celestial play and know that we love you very much and we are in your service. And with that, I want to say amen and blessed be, and wish you all a wonderful rest of the conference. Amen. Amen.
Yeah, wasn't it wonderful?
First, we shared a lot today.
They are 35. Well, the capacity 36.
So where are you located? Oh, okay, so you have a lot of Nigerian families there. So I was just like, what's that? Can we exchange your photos?
Oh, wow. Y'all
So they don't know.
Exactly. Do from crying start.
I was like, me.
As a woman,
Yeah, I'm a Cancer, so I feel it.
Sometimes I don't trust that I am Taurus because I'm mixed up Taurus with Pisces. Oh, that's kind of Pisces. So, thank you. You really do. Yeah, think about it. And yeah, you know, we can do ourselves. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go. Okay.
Exactly. So how do you book it?
Yeah, I was over. You're in the Bay Area, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, cool. Do you have a car? Do you guys work together?
No.
Okay,
I actually have to I do it at Texas.
Okay, cool. I'd love to
Let me write about your story and then write about what you think people should be doing for young women. You know, like what's from your experience, what does that mean? Yeah, but check out the website and read the other blogs and you're gonna get a sense of like the length and you know. That is great. I'm gonna take a photo of you then. Because we got to put a photo.
Yes.
So you live in the city?
I do.
Do you do the volunteer program? I started that whole application process. I'm sure.
I think we have probably got about 15 blogs from this conference. We're just choosing people who have something to say. We're like, what's something to say? The thing is it's the way of today. You know, gotta get the stories out there. So I like to have it. Okay. And then I said to you, okay. And then when you send me your piece, I can just, you know, back it. You know, we taught ourselves, you probably appreciate this, we taught ourselves how to do web design with Wix. You know, Wix.com.
My website is on Wix.
And so it's easy. You just upload it. You know, we're just like in charge of our own website.
I was gonna give you my card, but I ran out.
Allora, you did this?
Oh no, this is for me.
This is for you. Oh my God.
But sorry. I want your information anyway, so do it. Keep doing it.
Oh,
that's mine. I didn't write it. It's a cute little network message. Yeah.
My God. This is my own.
That's this one, right?
Aquí. ¿Habla español?
Oh, yeah.
I have